Good morning, podcast community. We are starting early this morning because early bird gets the worm, and we want to get Tommy before he goes to work. So, Tommy, I would love for you to introduce yourself, what you do, who you are, what you do, and maybe what events coming up, so the community will know what we're talking about and covering in our podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I appreciate you having me on. So my name's Tommy Stoner. I'm a retired Army Special Forces officer. So I served for 29 years. Currently, I work for a large bank. I run all the transformation efforts for the technology side of the bank here in Atlanta. And I work with an organization that is known as the Special Operators Transition Foundation. I went through the program in the past, was on the board, led the organization as CEO, and continue to support it. And that organization helps special operations veterans make a positive transition out of the military into their next career.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your service and what you have done for us. You spoke at our Rotary recently, and there's a couple things that it floored me when I was hearing your story and talking about what you're doing in transition with, special forces. I want to go back to one thing. You had said that, and I know my perception was always that the trauma that our military are under when we come out of the service and we're connecting to the civilian, there's, I think, 22 veterans a day that take their life. You had a different reason, and I'd never heard that. Could you tell our viewers what you were sharing with us that day?
Yeah, there's a statistic out there, and it's been debated, but of 22 veterans taking their life a day, and whether it's 22 or 25 or 15, it's way too many. Bottom line, and I think there's been a lot of research done on this, but I think the perception generally out there is that this is because there's some sort of trauma incurred during their military service and for example in combat, say in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or any of the other places we've been engaged over the last 20 plus years. But the reality is, when you really look at who's taken their lives, there's a lot of veterans that didn't serve in combat, didn't have that type of trauma. So there's some other driver, and it kind of goes to me as a loss of team and purpose. And it really makes sense when you look at why men and women go in the military, and it's sense of adventure sometimes to get to a better life position, or to serve their country. But regardless of why you come in, I think any veteran out there would really agree that regardless what you think of the military and the bureaucracy, and sometimes it's very, very, very painful, you find a team, those men and women on your left and right, you do have a sense of purpose, whether it's the military lineage or protecting our country or just serving a greater cause. And I think what happens with a lot of veterans when they make that transition from service and they go about back into the civilian, community, they're not surrounded by this team anymore. They may not have a sense of purpose out there. And I think that is hugely impactful. It creates a sense of loss. It creates a sense of I don't know who to turn to, and and that just leads to a downward spiral. And looking at the unfortunate cases of some of the men and women I know that have committed suicide post service, it really, if you got into how they were feeling and the conditions and what they expressed to others, it really was that loss of that the team and that higher purpose and mission. um and I think that can just really break anybody down. I think anybody can really relate to that, right? So you're
Totally.
passionate about something and you can't do it, or it's gone, and it's just a sense of loss that you can't get back. So I think that's a huge driver out there
Mhm.
for it, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people really focus on this combat trauma piece, and it's out there. It's very, very real. I
Mhm.
served 5.5 years in combat zones throughout the world, so it's very real. So I'm not being dismissive of that, but it's one component. And I think there's another component, and I personally think it's bigger. It's that sense of purpose. And if there is that combat trauma out there, this is just like fuel on gasoline when you have that loss of sense of purpose in team, particularly in the community I came from, the special operations community, where
Yeah.
it is incredibly tight. You serve with the same men and women for years in most cases. Um, you grow up through the ranks together, and you go through selection and assessment together. And even if you don't know them, there's this common thread that you've been through the
Mhm.
same formative experiences out there. So it builds a team, even if you don't know the person personally. But in a lot of cases, you really do know them personally. Deploying, I became an officer. I started off as enlisted, and I became an officer through the officer candidate school for the Army. But even then, when I went to Special Forces, I went through my selection and assessment course, my qualification course to become a Special Forces officer. You work with the enlisted going through the course as well, those sergeants, and I grew up through the ranks with them. So over the course of 20 years, serving with them on and off, or seeing them almost every day in a lot of cases, or if not every day, you're working with them in the same environment. So it's a really tight team out
Yeah,
there.
I when you said that, I said, I mean, absolutely, and I never heard it explained like that. And you can go back to the scripture, and it says, "Without a vision, a person will perish." And the whys, the purpose, the drive that's in all of us it will change because you're in that environment like you just described. And then you go out, and where is that community? Where is that environment? Where is that high level of that performance that you're underneath, or not underneath, but involved with? So I totally agree with you, and I think that that's really kind of, we always, when Christina was on, I mean, it was funny because I actually, I had talked to her about, her story was incredible when I was hearing it. And I said, you know what? You need, I mean, this is what I told her later, a strong person like a Navy SEAL. And she corrected me really quick. She goes, wait. He's not a Navy SEAL. And there's a perception in our world, this is a civilian world, that Navy SEAL is everything. I didn't even know there was an Army Ranger quote on special forces part of it, but you educated us that day that the majority are in special forces are come out of the Army Ranger part of it. But movies and books and all that put that emphasis on the SEAL part of it. So it's kind of like that perception that we all grab, that we have no idea what we're talking about. So, and I speak for myself, but you said something that, and I'd heard it in other discussions, that when you're looking at a position, let's say you went through the program, which you did, and I think you either said that the person that is employing you said, I don't know where we're going to put you, but I know you can adapt, and I know your skill level. We'll figure it out. And you had said something like, you're used to figuring things out. It's not like you get a playbook and this is how you work in combat. It's just like you figure it out. Tell our viewers kind of that perspective of how you have to be, how you're trained, and then you have that mindset of, I just got to figure it out.
Yeah, so I'll take it back a little bit big to small, and talk about the special operations community. So it's pretty large, as you said. It's mainly from the Army. About 70% comes from Army. It's
Mhm.
the Army component has the Army Special Forces. So the Green Berets, if you remember the old John Wayne movie and Rambo. We had our
Mhm.
day in the books and movies, as well. You have the Army Ranger regiments, so really the strike commandos. civil affairs and psychological operations, probably a little bit softer side, reconstruction, civil engagement, information type warfare out there. We also have the Night Stalkers in the Army, which is the helicopter component of the special operations, so the ones that
Mhm.
fly all the helicopters to help the special operations forces get to where they need to go. You can't really do your mission until you got to get there and get home to be successful. So they do that. You have the Air Force Special Operations component. They've got all the airplanes and the Ospreys, the tilt rotor, interesting aircraft, and some
Mhm.
different land components that assist the ground components there. Also very highly trained. The Marine Corps has a Marine Corps Special Operations, and somewhat similar, a blend between the Army Special Forces and the Rangers a little bit, but a really newer component, but a key component. The Navy SEALs, which I think everybody has heard about overall, and then some additional special missions units out there. So
Mhm.
again, the Army has really the largest in terms of personnel. Air Force is probably next. A lot of that's just because the aircraft are so heavy maintenance when you actually just count the air crews and like their special tactics a little bit
Mhm.
smaller. So it's a pretty large, diverse force. But the one thing that's very common in the selection is they're looking for really high potential candidates. And it's contrary to what is shown in the movies. They want thinkers, right? Not just order takers. They want to be able
Mhm.
to, all of them are assessing and selecting those who can be thoughtful and solve problems. You see a lot about the physical training, the SEALs on the beach with the logs, and in the Army Special Forces, we drug jeeps around that didn't have wheels, and you had to figure out how to get it. So a lot of physical labor, but the reason you do that is not only to test your physical abilities, but it's to put you under stress. It's to create artificial stress to see how you think under stress because people think very differently. If you get a cup of
Mhm.
coffee, you're on your desk, got a perfect temperature office room, but
Yeah.
things are stressful, and you've probably seen that at work. When things are going bad, projects are behind,
Yeah.
boss is upset, people start losing their minds. So you want the person who can be calm and cool and collected in the room and get things done. And the other thing is just like in life, there's no way you can train somebody
Yeah.
to understand every problem. So you just got to figure it out, right? And when you
Mhm.
get down to it, that's really what experience is, right? You've done things enough that you've been through enough situations that you've figured it out. That's what experience is, here, plain and simple. So you want somebody who's just going to figure it out. It's like I tell my kids, it's, hey, how do you go do this? And it's just like, well, figure it out. Like, yeah, I can show them some stuff, but at some point I push them to figure it out. I don't tell them
Yes.
because I want them to go through the experience of I have a problem. Let me think about it for a second and then start trying options and iterate on them. So it's a matter of figure it out. And that particularly like in the Army Special Forces is what we assessed and selected for is figure it out. In the Army Special Forces, our role was to go behind enemy lines, link up with resistance forces, and create a resistance force behind enemy lines to fight the enemy. That's why Army Special Forces was created.
Mhm.
And to do that, you're going to go into really situations with different cultures, different languages, different motivations, different equipment, all kinds of things. And so it's about figuring it out. And I think uh, when I was getting out, I was trying to figure it out myself. And like many veterans, I didn't know how my skills are going to translate because I'd been in the Army since I was 17. I joined right out of high school, I graduated high school a little bit early and went right into the Army.
Mhm.
So I didn't know anything but the military service and what they taught me. And that's where our program came in. At the time, the Special Operators Transition Foundation was known as Your Grateful Nation. And the focus is taking special operations, so those Army Green Berets, Rangers, Navy SEALs, aviators, all the others, and putting them through a program that runs over 18 months to help us understand ourselves, translate our skills, make connections, and make a positive transition out there. So I was number 12 coming through the program. So
Wow.
very early on, we've done
Mhm.
over 600 now. as a team. So it's growing. It's doubling about every year. It's pretty incredible overall how the program is so successful. Not surprising, but it's pretty amazing to see that.
Yeah.
But I met with some coaches and mentors, and their point was you have a lot of skills. You've got a lot of what the industry is going to call soft skills, which I personally hate.
Yeah.
Soft
No.
skills are hard skills, right?
Yes.
I
I
sit
totally.
and I work in technology, and there's some incredibly intelligent men and women in technology. But at a certain level, it's your ability to kind of navigate the politics that any organization has, the organizational friction that any organization of size has, the different perspectives of stakeholders, and then also have accountability to build a plan and drive it to resolution. Those are hard skills. They're not
Hmm.
soft skills, right?
Yep. Totally.
And it's like negotiation. If you work business contracts, your ability to influence and negotiate is not a soft skill, it's a hard skill, right?
Hmm.
That is your primary skills. And that's what our program taught. So I may not have technology coding experience, but I've had a lifetime of taking bits and pieces from different functions and putting them together in a cohesive plan,
Hmm.
and then working with the people who do understand it to make sure the people left and right understand what they're doing, and work together as a team to accomplish things. So that's a little bit of figuring it out, and even to this day there's not a day that goes by at work that something doesn't come my way that I just got to go figure it out. Figuring out
Hmm.
means who may know about this, learning enough about it, figuring out who are the other stakeholders, how it connects in, and every day you just put it on the wrench in your toolkit.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I think that's what the special operations community in particular is really good for that, and it's pretty powerful, right? You take a highly motivated
Hmm.
man or woman who is look. We didn't get paid more than the average person out there. There's some like demolition pay or some hazardous pay, but even outside the special operations community, you got those depending on what your position was. But like
Hmm.
the aviators in the special operations who were gone 270 days, doing most of their missions at night, flying to cities with wires and people shooting at them in the middle of nowhere, they didn't get paid more than the person sitting stateside doing the same thing.
Right.
So there was something else driving it. It's that motivation to be a part of the best, and
Hmm.
to go out there and be on a team that's part of the best. And again, you take that drive and you combine it with, hey, go figure it out, and some basic process things, and that's incredibly powerful. That's an incredibly powerful combination out there. And
Totally.
going t Yeah, and going to the story you asked, so I was sitting in through that transition. I got a lot of mentorship and coaching, but a gentleman at the bank, I had dinner at a function that the organization was running, and these are pretty powerful that we run to connect these operators with local business entities and leaders. And this leader told me, I told him a story of various things I'd done. I'd worked in the jungles and deserts and embassies. I'd built intelligence fusion centers, you know, 60 days after I got off an airplane of chasing bad guys around Afghanistan. So we just moved from different things to different things, and said, I just don't know what life skills I have to be able to bring to a business. And and he's like, you have everything you need. He's like,
Yeah.
I know somebody who is looking for people like you, and it happened to be the leader of the technology for the bank at the time, and he put me in contact with him, and it went from there. And there was a bunch of other willing partners inside the bank. I had a huge advocate inside the bank. Her dad had retired out of the army, and he had a really tough transition, and she knew how capable he was, and she became one of my biggest advocates inside.
Mhm.
So when there are detractors like he doesn't have the background, she really stood on the table and said he does. And I literally had met her one time in a 30-minute interview.
Wow.
So it's making connections with people who are going to be advocates and can kind of see through that. And then also as a transitioning service member, you have to be ready, which is what our program does. It helps those veterans, the special operations veterans, be ready for those conversations to be able to communicate their value.
Yeah, and I think that's like the soft skill part of it. I agree with you on the hard skill. I have not liked that term because I think it if you have those kind of skills, it's not soft. They are developed by almost iron sharpening iron, kind of like sharpening whatever. And I've heard that so many times, and I'm going, no, that's not an accurate description of that. So what would you say, like, okay, so Thursday's coming up. I one other thing I want you to talk to our viewers about. You had said, it's growing, doubling every year, that it's kind of a program that will go away once it gets to the point where it just keeps like exponentially growing, because people are going to ask you, like, Tommy, how did you get to this position? And then of course you tell the story about the transition and how it was very structured in the sense of getting your skills that you had built up into the civilian match. So speak to that part of it, because I think that's absolutely incredible that you see that as part of the future of the program.
Yeah, having a program that gets veterans positively transition, and there's some really good programs out there. Ours is very high touch. It's very unique in the transition world, but there's others like the Commit Foundation. There's 4Block, which is very big here in Atlanta, that help just all veterans make that transition, do something very similar, just in a different way, but they want the same outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So again, having that positive transition for veterans creates a positive environment. And, we used to have a saying like, nobody's coming but us, and self-rescue in the special operations, right? Like self-rescue means get yourself out of it. Don't count on others. Plan for that, but don't count on it. Make sure you can, no matter what, you can take care of yourself. Look, the U.S. government is not going to fix the veteran transition problem, or the veteran. What I see is kind of the mental and suicide state. Veterans are going to fix that with partners out there in the civilian community that are willing and able. So our goal is to work with other veterans organizations. We focus on transition as others do, but also have partnerships with those who focus on the medical and financial and mental health, to make sure you get a rounded, well prepared veteran as they go out in the community. And those veterans will then turn around and start to help other veterans, and it starts to cascade. And if we can really do this enough to where we get veterans out there, in communities, in leadership positions, helping other veterans actively make that transition, and building coalitions of even non-veterans out there that they're not just willing to give a chance, but appreciate veterans. As we say, we're not helping our operators get jobs, we're helping them get careers and new lives.
Yeah.
Right. So if we can create that, we don't need this organization to do what we have to do. Right. So if we can get the military to a point where their transition program is better, we can create a willing environment out there in the industry and communities. I think we can make not only the veterans' lives better, but their families, their communities, the businesses they impact. It's cascading. It really is out there. And this isn't a gratuitous, there's none of that. As part of our program, we make sure it's the right fit for both parties as we help them coach, and we make sure, and we actively counsel our veterans to make sure they say no to things that aren't a good fit. But when it's a good fit for both parties, it's pretty amazing what comes out of it. So we definitely want to make it go away. We're not quite there yet. But we do have a goal to get there and work ourselves out of a job, because we've created that positive environment. So we need help to do it, which then goes to what we're doing here in the Atlanta area. How we run our program is we run it in phases. So we start about 18 months before these veterans get out of the military, these special operations veterans. So they apply to our program. We screen them. We make sure that they're aligned to what we're trying to do. So, for example, we don't have a focus program if you want to be an entrepreneur. But there are other programs that are very good at it. So if we find there's something like that, we'll do a very positive handover and make sure that they get to that other organization that's going to help them out. But if they're a fit for what we're trying to do is make that transition, that civilian career, think more going to work for an established company, whether it's big or small, out there to start their career path. Then we'll bring them in our program and probably about the first 6 months is really the assessment. So it's understanding them, having them understand themselves, start to understand their value, and start to develop their ability to communicate that value. So their pitch statement. And then we'll start on things like resumes. But the most important thing is their ability to actually communicate their value by using stories about their experiences. The next 6 months, what we do is we start getting them, and some of this runs in parallel, so it's not set, perfectly like finished to start. But we'll start connecting them with those out in the different industries and workforce. Because then they know functionally what they want to do. They want to sell things, build things, create things, um, an expert at something if they do have some sort of expertise that they bring to the table, like a technical expertise. So they have an ability to talk about themselves and they know the direction they're going. So we'll partner them with business partners and just mentors and contacts in the industry so they can have discussions to refine it. So, for example, I had a discussion this week with somebody who was interested in technology. So I was able to talk to them about what I did in technology and different components in technology and different levels of technology out there. So we coach and mentor them through that process with the intent that they continue to develop themselves, but also that they start to make contacts. And it's the network, right? Your best positions are going to come through your network. Rarely you're going to find that on Indeed.com. And even if you find it, people are always looking for those references in. So we start to build their network, continue to refine their understanding. And then the last 6 months is really kind of the finish phase while before they get out. And again, this is all going before they get out, which is now they're actively in the execution of finding their position. The intent is that second phase, those contacts continue into that next phase. If not, and they do have to go the route to where they're finding something online or through some job mechanism like that. We help them with their resume to polish it. We also help them prepare for the interviews. We give them advice as they go through the interview process, and if they get an offer, we help them. We don't negotiate on their behalf, but we'll take a look at their offer and give them advice and help them give them negotiation advice so that they're in a good position. Because in the military, you don't get to negotiate your salary. You don't walk in when I was a private and say, "Hey, Sergeant, I've been doing a good job." I really think my first paycheck was $492 a month back in the 80s or mid 80s. I didn't get to walk in and say I'd really like 550 for some extra beer money, right? That just doesn't happen. So
No.
we have negotiation skills, but it's just weird. Like the most
Yeah.
awkward thing was negotiating for something for myself, which is funny because I was in bazaars and all kinds of places throughout the world, and I was a pretty hardcore negotiator. But it was just really weird doing it for a salary. But we work through the process and give them advice and even HR advice on there. We have HR reps we can reach out to give advice. And then once they accept the offer, we'll stay with them for a focus period of 90 days. So we help write a 90-day transition plan. We check in with them to make sure that they're transitioning well. And then they're a lifetime member of our network. So going back to our mantra of we want to work ourselves out of the job, it's mandatory that you provide support back to our network by being a coach and a mentor and then helping us, whenever we come to town and functions. Now, let me talk about what we're doing here in Atlanta. It starts actually tonight. So most of the operators are flying in tonight, but all day tomorrow, Deloitte here in Atlanta, the office here has been gracious enough. They're going to host an all-day workshop for these veterans. So these special operations veterans are coming from around the United States, and we do support those that are deployed internationally. but they're coming here to Atlanta, and all day tomorrow they're going to spend time at Deloitte, and they're going to meet different industry leaders that are a good cross section of industries represented here in Atlanta in different functions. And then we're going to have a network session tomorrow night. So that's part of that second phase, and
Mhm.
even that third phase where we work with them. And this is huge because they're actually face to face, and these are all veterans who are interested in the Atlanta or Southeast market. So it's
Mhm.
getting them in market to meet these leaders and networks and even companies. So we'll have company reps there. And
Mhm.
then on Thursday, we've got a fundraising event. So early in the day, we're at Governor's Gun Club in Kennesaw. Um, we will be there. We're going to do a shooting event. It's called Get Your Lead Out. So some donors are going to be able to shoot with some of the operators
Mhm.
um, out there, various type weapons in the daytime. And then late afternoon, early evening, we're moving into a VIP session. So that evening, we have a guest speaker and a band at the gun club
Mhm.
from 7 to 9. So it's open to everybody. But George Piro is going to be there. And George was the FBI interrogator. So when the Army Special Mission Unit captured Saddam Hussein, George Piro was the lead interrogator for Saddam Hussein. So the first time we'd ever actually capture a world leader like that since World War II. And just an interesting story and perspectives that he has on that whole time frame. And then afterwards, we've got Scooter Brown from the War Hippies and the Scooter Brown Band. He's going to be
Mhm.
here, just amazing. He's a Marine Corps veteran himself. So that's open. That 7 to 9 is open to everybody. Tickets are $50, and I'll tell you, it's a great deal to hear George and the band.
Yeah.
So it'll be a good event there, and you get a chance to meet some of these operators. But before that, in between the shooting event and that evening event, there is also a VIP event if you want to look at that. But you'll get a chance to actually meet some of these operators, talk to them. George Piro is going to be there, so you'll have a good focus discussion with those VIP members before we move into the broader um, event in the evening there. But again, a really good culmination that lays out how we do our mission. So it's supporting these operators, getting them to meet the folks, continuing that even with the fundraiser. It continues the ability of these operators to interact with these different business leaders, because most of these donors are business leaders and community influencers. So sitting there, even if they're shooting pistols together, it's just that time and an interaction together that's pretty powerful. And I'll tell you, there isn't a day that goes by that when we do these events that it can be as random as whether it's fly fishing, because we do a lot of different type events like this. It could be a fly fishing or a race car or, just sitting around listening to music, smoking cigars, and just that dialogue. It's like,
Mhm.
particularly business leaders who created their own companies and kind of came up through the trenches, they can feel it. They can say, "Hey, I can feel the intensity of these operators." And there is an event that goes by that we don't get people hired just from those interactions, in addition to these really focused networking and program events we do.
No, that's so good. I'm bringing a friend of mine, and so he was telling me when he was dating his wife, and he has three girls, and actually Christina knows one of his daughters. He was a three-star general, and he said, like, I'm going to date this girl, and I'm talking to a 6'5", three-star general. He goes, you talk about intimidation. He goes, it was just, and he went through a couple stories of that, and I think he's going to come, so we'll be there for the, I guess, the VIP. So I think Christina said 5:30 is when
Yeah.
that starts. So I just want to encourage our viewers to share this with their community, share it with your friends. There's still time left because the main event is Thursday for you to participate in this, either to hear George speak or the band at $50 or $150, and really get an involvement in what you guys are doing. And I think when you were explaining the soft skills, I was thinking you absolutely flipped the script, because they come in with hard skills, but then you teach them soft skills like resume building, these little things that are just really soft. But you put soft skills with hard skills, by gosh, you get the complete really way of letting people know what they have before them. So I just want to encourage our viewers to participate, donate, help drive this, because we have a rich community here in Atlanta, and they all want to do things, but sometimes we don't know what to do. Well, share this with somebody that can participate and support what you're doing. So Tommy, I want to thank you, because I know you got a job to do. So I promised you we would be in the 25 to 30, but we've gone over 5 minutes. But thank you for sharing with our community that what you're doing and how you're doing it, and the intentionality of really getting that high level of, I call it high. We have a kind of a high performance community. We call it, and we do high performance coaching. So I know there's a difference in the two levels, and you are definitely part of high performance. I mean, that's crazy. When I looked at when you at Rotary, you had the difference between, I think, 20 years and 25, and then 30 years and 35. 95% of the people that come out with that many years have master's degrees. I mean, and there was a bunch of other things on there too, but I'm going, holy mackerel. I mean, you can't get any higher just in the educational part, besides the hard skills that you learn along the way. So thank you so much for really spearheading this organization and really taking it to our private community and really giving them an opportunity to partner with your Army Rangers or Special Forces. So before we end, what would you want our viewers to take home from our time here on the podcast?
Yeah, I would say get involved. Like, if you really want to make a difference in veterans, I think it starts with that positive transition. So our organization is a great start. If you have a passion for other organizations, say you were a former Marine, or I know they hate that term, you are a Marine, right? They just completed their active duty time. Go find an organization who supports that, because it starts with that positive transition.
Yeah.
With that positive transition, it creates a pathway that makes the rest of life better. And I am 100% convinced that's how we start to bring down a lot of these other veterans issues and flip it and start to have it very positive impacts on the communities in this nation.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to come here this morning, and we'll see you on Thursday night. So have fun today with your start of the weekend or start of the week. And thank you so much for taking the time to come and share with us.
Thanks for having me on, Peter. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.